Okay, great. So it's great to see all of you again. I know we're a bit of a smaller group today. I think that means we can have more discussion about your specific situations or scenarios if you have questions or if you want to dive deeper on those. I did have an action item from last week that I wanted to just start with, which was to just show another approach to journey mapping. So this is a journey map from a retail journey where their goal here was to identify some areas where they could make some quick improvements as opposed to reimagining the entire journey. They thought, generally speaking, that the entire journey was pretty set or pretty standard, just given that it was an online or in-store retail purchasing experience. So they just wanted to identify what was working well, what were some areas that they maybe needed to focus on. And then also they want to identify the impact, the financial impact of each each stream. So here the question had been about how to split off if you have two different paths. So this was how we did it. Instead of doing the level 0, level 1 journey map, we just actually went through every step at a very kind of granular level, and we split it off into two paths depending how they came to the online platform. And then they went through it and they used the colors to say yellow is and green was working really well for them, I think is what they had done there. And then they did put the feelings in other colors, just white, just to kind of put in. Again, depends on what your goal is. So I always start to think about with journey mapping or really any of these tools, what are you trying to achieve with the tool? And then making the tool work for you instead of being so set on following exactly the methodology or the template, modifying it to suit your needs, your outcomes, your group, their level of experience with journey mapping. This was my client's first time journey mapping as well. So we kept it pretty simple, but then we did put the impact at the end so that if they were asking for investment, they would be able to articulate the impact per customer of improving that journey. And we'll talk a little bit about ROI or business cases later today, but this is a good way to start to articulate the impact depending on what your journey is, but looking at it on a journey by journey basis, what the impact is of if you lose a customer or if you miss an upsell opportunity, things like that. You could identify that in your journey map right there. So it's already baked in. Any questions on this? Okay. So today then we were going to cover a lot around empathy mapping, personas. There's many different kinds of personas. We're going to work on one, but I will show you a couple of different ones. And I have some examples of other clients who've done some persona work. Talk about the voice of the customer. And this is where we can really get into a discussion, I think, about each of your organizations and where you're at, because there's a lot of different ways to collect voice of the customer information, depending on your maturity and your size, tools, things like that. So we can actually dive into each of your organizations if you're interested. And then I just have a little bit of information, a tool or a template for you on building a CX business case. So to start, I'd love to just start by doing a quick insight, share with the group one insight or something you learned from last week. I'll just start with Angela. She's the first one here, first one on my list.
I have nothing, sorry.
Okay. That's okay. No problem. I know Vivian is going to stay quiet today. She's under the weather, but wanted to participate. So we'll leave her alone. Roberto.
Can you hear me? Hello.
Hi.
Sorry, 1 second.
We can hear you.
Okay, thanks. One word for me, strategy. I think being able to understand how to put things into the strategy is something I took from
Okay,
the last session.
great. You don't just have to stick to one word for this. Feel free to share more if you have more to share. If not, I can move on to Jeff.
Please move.
Hello.
And Jeff, I don't know if you were here last week, actually.
I was not. Unfortunately, I missed last week. Busy doing lots of CX stuff. I guess one of the things that I ended up taking away and spent a bunch of time on it yesterday, I use a similar application to Mural. I use Figma.
Okay.
So I was using Figma and I started mapping out 3 persona journey maps just based on customer segments that we have. And just started trying to envision kind of that whole process. I took an approach of, kind of multiple stages, right? Awareness, consideration, purchase across the horizontal. And then vertical, I kind of tackled 2 different areas. I did both internal and external. So I've got a whole section that focuses on, empathy, client activities, what they're doing, the emotions, everything that focuses on that. And then I kind of added a middle section that covered measurement areas. So what kind of measurement areas could we do to track at each of these stages, right? So whether it was lead generation, net promoter scores, et cetera. And then the whole bottom half was focused on the business. So on the same chart, the whole bottom half is what are the business goals? What are the KPIs? What are all those metrics that kind of align what's happening and how we're able to accurately measure? So that's kind of what I'm working on right now, trying to piece the 2 together.
That sounds very robust. We'd love to see that if you feel like sharing it maybe next week. No pressure. Think about it. Let me know. Sounds like you've definitely combined many of the different areas that we're looking at into one page, journey on a page with all the personas and the measurements, KPIs. So sounds great.
It's a lot happening.
And then Ashley.
So I guess a big insight from last week would have been around the idea of being customer centric in your work. So I kind of thought about most places I work, and truthfully, I don't know that most places were. Like, everyone always says the customer was the ultimate goal, and that's all that matters is good customer service. But really, everyone's processes and the way they do business is structured around their internal processes, how their teams are set up, that kind of thing. And they kind of in my experience, most places I've worked have sort of forced the customer journey to fit into how we manage internally. I don't think as a customer that's kind of lousy, but I think that's just something to be mindful about is going forward, is that while we like to tell ourselves maybe we're thinking of the customer first, the truth is we're probably going with what's easiest based on what's working. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great insight. Thanks for sharing, Ashley. Okay. So we're going to start with empathy, and really the crux of empathy is being able to put yourself in the shoes of the other person and relate or connect to how they're feeling and what they're experiencing. And it's an incredibly important skill to have, not only from a customer experience perspective, but also from a leadership perspective. When you're leading teams, being able to connect and relate with your employees and being able to adapt your style to meet the needs of your employees is also really relevant. And so some of the tools, especially the empathy map that I'm going to show you today, could be used either with a customer in mind or with an employee in mind, or even in your own personal relationships. Building your empathy skills is really important. And I have a couple of other exercises you can do if you want, just to kind of help build that empathy muscle, so to speak. So a nice little definition of empathy is just the action of understanding, being aware of, or being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experiences of another. So just to elaborate a little bit further, empathy is really important. It helps you understand how to respond, and adapting your response to the situation is particularly important in customer interactions at the customer facing level, or even if you're building out processes or communications, if you anticipate how a customer is going to feel when they see that, then you can actually craft your messages more appropriately Trying to anticipate is a big part of it. Will help you build more meaningful connections. And as we know, building more meaningful connections will help improve the results that you have, the financial results. You know, the bulk of a buying decision is based on the emotion or the irrational feelings. So if you can build your empathy at all levels of your organization, it's going to help you build more meaningful connections, which are going to help you deliver better results. And it just helps us better regulate ourselves. You'll hear like emotional intelligence. Empathy is a big part of emotional intelligence. So by better understanding others, we can more easily tap into how we are feeling ourselves and regulate our own emotions. So it also helps us develop our leadership skills and how we interact and communicate with others. As we learn more about empathy, we learn more about ourselves, we become more self-aware, and then we can adapt our feelings or adjust our feelings accordingly. So for empathy mapping, this is the simplest little tool that you can use. It dives into one particular person or persona. Today we'll look at kind of one person in particular, and you'll look at what they say, what they think, what do they do, and how do they feel. And then what you could do is you could even add like a little box at the bottom, which is what are your key takeaways? So what are you going to do differently when you interact with them, or what's going to be most important to them? So I have an exercise for us today where we'll go into the mural. So I'll drop the particular mural into the chat here. Just give me a moment. You guys can all click in. Okay, so I'll just give you guys each a number, and then you can just pick, kind of go 1, 2, 3, 4 across, and then 5, 6, 7. So Angela, you'll be 1, Ashley 2, Vivian 3, Jeff 4, and then Roberto 5. And then you can just each grab one. I didn't know who all was going to be here today, so I didn't go ahead and name them. But what we'll do is I will give you some time today, and you can really pick anybody, but I'll challenge you to pick somebody that maybe you're struggling with, or you have a relationship that you would like to improve. Maybe it's your boss or your colleague, or even a personal relationship, and try to put 3 to 5 sticky notes in those blocks. Keep it anonymous, but just some sort of reference in the middle to help you focus on who it is you're thinking about. Really try to like dive deep. Think about the interactions that you have with them. Think about what's important to them. If it's a colleague or a boss, you know, if it's a work relationship, what makes them successful? What motivates them? You know, ask yourself some of these additional questions to fill out each of these 4 squares. And I will give you each 5 minutes here to work on this. And if you have questions, feel free to just go off mute, because there's just 5 of us. I'll just keep us here in the larger group today instead of breaking out. Okay, just 1 minute left. And if you have an insight or an aha moment when you're putting that down, you can put a light bulb next to it. You can put an extra little statement. For me, I did one for a relationship I have. And I put a little light bulb with a little bit of an insight when I had an aha moment. I certainly didn't complete it as much as everyone else has, but I did put a few things if you wanted to take a look at mine. Mine's in spot 6. And then I put an insight at the bottom, or in terms of like a takeaway, how I need to work with them or change or adapt my own personal approach. I love that little ding. It kind of reminds me of being on a plane and hitting the call button for the attendant. Okay, so I'll just give you a couple of seconds to wrap up. So this particular template is actually a design thinking template. So you can put this in your design thinking toolkit. And this is a great exercise that you can also facilitate with a group. So I've used this many times when you're trying to better understand a working relationship that we have with a particular colleague or a particular customer, depending on your individual situations or your business models. This might be good if you have like in the B2B world where you have large accounts, or you have accounts and maybe you're having a difficult time with one of your customers, to sit down and do an empathy map. And particularly in work relationships, adding in what makes them successful and thinking how you can help them be successful. That's a really great thing to tap into. And then also to tap into when they think or they say or they do something, trying to get a layer deeper and understanding what's contributing to that behavior. So in my case, I have a relationship that I'm trying to improve at work. And when my style is when I reach out to somebody. So if Ashley, I was reaching out to you, it'd be to collaborate or to pick your brain to see, I have this idea, can you help me flesh it out further, or can we collaborate to get it, so that it's something that we'll be able to succeed with on the first try, that sort of thing. But when I approach this person to do that, they go into advice mode and tell me what to do instead of sitting down and brainstorming and really trying to, take their idea and my idea and marry them together and get something that's even better. And so just, thinking about that and maybe understanding what could be contributing to that behavior. My assessment is that they want to feel respected. They want to feel that they're able to make a significant contribution. And so that's probably driving behaviors. So maybe for me, my takeaway is I need to be more clear, more upfront about what it is I'm looking for. Oh, okay. So I'm getting some feedback that possibly you guys aren't able to hear me very well today. I'll just try turning my camera off for a couple of minutes and we'll see if that improves it. If not, I can disconnect and come back in. So I'll just turn off my camera. Okay. Just indicate on the chat if that's better or worse. So as I was saying, I was just saying that I was evaluating my own relationship with a colleague of mine, and that usually when I go to someone on my team, an employee or a colleague or my boss, I'm looking to collaborate and to flesh out an idea and to take it even further. However, when I interact with this particular person, they go into advice mode or telling me how to do it. And when I think about that behavior and I try to understand why that might be happening, it might be because they want to feel respected, they want to feel valued, or like that they have something to contribute. Or they're also in a position of authority, so they may think that I'm reaching out to get that advice. So maybe my takeaway here is that I need to be more clear up front when I reach out to them, but what it is I'm seeking in that interaction, that I'm not looking to be told what to do, but I'm looking to really better develop an idea or a process or an improvement that I want to make, and to make sure I haven't missed anything, to just talk it through, pick someone's brain. So that's just one way that you can leverage this. I remember when I was doing my design thinking training in the facility, the facilitator had taught her teenage daughter about this particular tool. And then it became kind of a go-to for her daughter as she was navigating high school and interacting with different kids and with teachers and stuff. When she would face a difficult situation, she would just kind of sit down and draw out an empathy map. So this isn't something you have to only use in your professional life. You can use it in your personal life, and you can just make it really simple. Like I was just draw out the quadrant on a blank piece of paper instead of coming into Mural when I'm working on a relationship where I'm trying to understand somebody else's perspective, and I need to do it in a more deliberate way because I'm having a hard time connecting. This is a great tool to help you with that. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna just open it up here if anybody has any comments, insights, thoughts they'd like to share about this tool.
Yes, I have a question. Is there a template I can actually have it so I can actually play around with this for the future?
Absolutely. I can send you like a PDF version of it.
Okay.
You
It's just I suck at exercises.
Oh, that's okay. I'll make sure that what I've put into these murals, that I'll prepare a nice little package for you guys at the like next week with
Okay.
all of the tools, and I'll kind of do like a nice little summary email so it's all in one place for you, including the slides.
Okay.
Yes, great question.
Thank you. That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to make a note just so I don't forget. Okay. This is one you'll come back to, I'm sure, and use it many, many times. I find it really, really helpful. Okay, so we'll pop back over. This is another way to use the empathy map, and this is the tool or the template that's actually in Mural. So if you continue to use Mural beyond this, this is like the standard empathy map template that's in Mural, and it already has the little sticky notes already set up, and it has a few more triggers for you to help collect feedback. And it also has the addition of like, what are their pains and their gains. This is really good for when you're doing your journeys, or you want to understand your users more, your customers more, understanding their pains and their gains. This is a great one to add in. You might have done pains and gains as part of other exercises or part of other tools for user experience or UI design, things like that. You may have also used it in product development. So you can pull this all into a more comprehensive template. These are just a few different times when you could use empathy maps to help you with your segmentation. You can use empathy maps to help you inform your strategy by deciding on which segments to target, by completing your compelling value proposition. So a big part of the value proposition is the pains and gains, but then adding on the empathy element will help take it to the next level. Oftentimes, see efficiency improvements by coupling an empathy map with a journey map improvements, because oftentimes when the journey is really complicated, you actually have negative emotions associated with it. Oh, I have a question. I'll come back to it in 1 second. You often have negative emotions associated with it because it's so complex, and often delivering a complex journey is more costly. Let me just take a look at the question. Roberto, do you mean like to a segment or,
Yeah, let's suppose I
Yeah.
have,
yeah, so you can,
I have 15 people that they're somehow are going to be affected. Should I run the empathy map to each individual or just to those that I have identified as possible challenging individuals to work with?
I mean, that's a great question. It, I would certainly do it for the ones that you've identified as being challenging, but you may not need to do, say, all 15. You may notice that like you could group them together, that you know that they're fairly similar, that there's 2 or 3 that are kind of, maybe, I don't know if you're talking about employees, potentially like maybe team members or something. They're really analytical, they want the details. Then there's others that are maybe really focused on the what's in it for me. So maybe you could kind of group them and build out just a couple of different, like 2 or 3 or 4 empathy maps to give you almost a persona. Because it could be a little bit taxing to do, say, 15 of these, but if you're also just doing it kind of quickly, you could do it that way. You could just also do it one time if it's like somebody, if it's people you work with regularly, do it one time as just an exercise to get to know your team or your colleagues better.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of ways that these will help on either acquiring, retaining, or deepening your customer relationships. So thinking about targeting your growth in a particular segment by focused marketing, making sure this is like where if your marketing team uses these, this might help with some of the language that they're using in their marketing materials. I like to think about what do you want your customers to feel in the marketing part of the journey or the sales part of the journey, thinking about that, and then making sure that what you're actually creating is, eliciting the required emotions, making sure that if you want it to have a human feel, that you want your experience to have a human feel, that the marketing and the sales cycle maps to that, and using empathy maps can help with that, can help you with identifying which features or benefits to develop. And then again, back into marketing, improving the value proposition or fixing areas of dissatisfaction, particularly around dissatisfaction, is really mindful of, is dissatisfaction a driver, or is it a driver of the buying decision? Or dissatisfaction, is it a deterrent? Is it preventing them from continuing that relationship? So when you have area of dissatisfaction or complaints, diving a little bit deeper and understanding that more and asking some additional questions. And then just deepening those customer relationships even further. The empathy maps have many, many uses, and they're going to lead into the development of your personas. So there's a few different types of personas. We are going to look at the Pronto persona, which is similar to the empathy map. This is a little bit fuzzy. I'm going to go over into Mural because it's a little bit more clear. We have a persona template in here, very similar to what we did on the empathy map. Here, though, you are kind of combining that name and sketch of who the person is or who that persona is. And in a Pronto persona, you do try to make it personal. So you could put in a visual and name them. Naming your personas can be really helpful when you're sharing them in your organization. What are their typical behaviors and actions? And then a little bit around the demographic and particularly the psychographic details. I tend to find in experience design that the psychographics are more important than the demographics, but depending on your organization, demographics might be a very important piece of it. So keeping that in there if it's relevant to your organization, and then thinking about their needs and pain points. So very similar to the empathy map, but we're going to do this on a more generic level. And for our exercise today, I would love it if you would all just think about kind of the target persona. So who is your ideal customer, and building that out in your persona here, and thinking about that work that you did on the journey and on the strategy and tactics that we've already done, thinking about that and building that into your persona, or considering that. And then again, you can just grab the same spot that you had on the empathy map mural and spend about 5 or 7 minutes here building out the name and the sketch. You can try to find an image from the image library to put in a picture of who that person is or what they might look like, putting in the behaviors and actions, the needs and pain points, and then the demographic and particularly the psychographic details. Did I lose everybody?
I'm trying to find that.
Oh, I'll send you the link. I'll pop the link into the chat.
Thanks.
So I like this. I like the persona template when I'm building it out for customers and I want to get a little bit deeper than the empathy map. I tend to use the empathy map for my more internal relationships with my colleagues or personal relationships, as like a way to just kind of quickly do something, or to get alignment around how somebody is feeling. And I use that in, say, a workshop. But the personas, this would be something that you would spend more time developing, and that you could use this template, or I do have other templates to show you. You could use this with your team to build out your personas even further. I like this one because it's pretty simple and straightforward. And again, depending what you're going to do with these, what your intended outcome is or your need will help you identify how much time you spend on these, how granular you get in the details that you're putting down, and if this template or one of the other ones I'll show you is more relevant. Don't see much action on the mural. Is everybody able to get in there?
What do you think
Find their
about that
spot.
person?
Yeah, take a few minutes. I just want to make sure everybody's good. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. You guys should all be able to continue in the mural. Just going to pull up something else to show you after we're done this.
Hey, Janelle, I'm going to be honest. I totally missed the instructions and I have no idea what we're supposed to be doing.
That's no problem.
I suspect some others are like that too.
Yeah, Joe.
Okay. No problem. And the exercise is to just go into the persona template at the same position. So I think Ashley, you were number 2, Angela, you were number 1, and build out your ideal customer persona. Just document it there using this template.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So the psychographic details you could pull from an empathy map, and that's more like the what do they think and feel. And then the behaviors and actions you could pull from the say and do portion of the empathy map and combine those to help you complete that. So I'll just give you guys a quick second to finish up. Feel free to come back to this later on as well. And generally speaking, these templates that I'm showing you, like if you're doing them for your organization, for your business, you're probably best to do this as a group. And if you were doing this using a design thinking approach, you would give everybody, you would have this template, say, drawn out by hand on a piece of flip chart paper, and you would give everybody sticky notes, and you would have them put all of their thoughts. And so everybody would be putting up a bunch of thoughts. So you would probably have duplicates, but you would give everybody, 5 or 7 minutes to like put their sticky notes, write their sticky notes, and then go put their sticky notes up on the persona template. And then what you would do is you would do this, this roundtable sharing portion where you have everybody share one point. So they explain the sticky note, because generally in design thinking, there's not a lot of details on your sticky notes. They're really just, 1 to 3 words or an image, maybe a little stick person drawing or something that represents something. So everybody shares a point that they had, and they share something that hasn't already been shared. So if I shared, they like to make quick decisions under their demographic details, and somebody else had that same thought, they wouldn't share that, they would share a different thought. So you would have everybody share at least one idea, then you could give another pass. Was there anything else that hadn't been shared? So you want to get to the point where all of the ideas have been expressed. And then you have everybody come together and they do this remix where they group the stickies into common themes. So if you have a true duplicate, you can easily put those together, but maybe there's 2 ideas that are different but similar, and maybe it makes sense to group those together and then to rename it. And then at the end of the day, you would have had everybody participate and contribute, collaborate, and then you would have this visual that has, maybe 5 to 7 points under each of the categories within that particular persona. And then whoever the facilitator is could take it away, clean it up, so that you have a really nice, clear, concise persona that everybody's built together. And then because they've built it together, there's a lot more buy-in. They connect with the concept of who that persona is even more. And because you've talked about it and they've heard from everybody around the table what contributes to that persona, they've internalized it more, and it will just naturally make it easier for them to accommodate or adjust what they're doing to better suit that persona. So that's, in a design thinking world, how you would execute this. Any questions? Okay. So here's a couple of more templates. You could also Google and find many more templates. It's really up to you. But the key takeaways here are: try to not do this in a silo, like try to not do it by yourself. Bring people together, bring your team together, bring cross-functional representatives together to contribute to the development of the persona, because a persona is going to impact all of the teams in your organization, from marketing, sales, finance, CX, customer success or customer service, IT. They should all be aware. So it would be great if you could have a representative from each of the teams that participates. So this is just another template that you could use. Here's a sample of one that was built by one of my clients. So they they actually did about, I think, 10 different personas. This was a university that was doing this as part of their alumni engagement strategy. So they built out a little bit more about each of these personas. They included some of the demographic stuff. They put a bit more background about that particular persona, their goals. For them, they thought that technology was an important consideration because it would impact how they reach out or how they engage, what types of events they might participate in. So they included technology as an additional category. So feel free to modify your templates as you need to better suit the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. They included pain points, fears, some values, brands that they really like or that they connect with, different social media channels they use or the communication styles. And then they had, sorry, it just disappeared here for a second. They had some little summary notes at the bottom to make it more clear in terms of, I'm just trying to click away from the, sorry, apologies. Let me see if I can get back. There we go. Just the summary notes at the bottom. So they're very devoted, hardworking, skilled, and they value integrity. So they had the little summary there at the bottom, so you could easily kind of pull out the key takeaways. So summaries are always great for any of these tools to just put a little summary. What does this mean? Or what do I need to do differently? So that you don't always have to read through it and then try to guess what you need to do. Somebody's already done the work of helping you. So there's another persona concept. It's not widely used and it has a couple of different names, but this is, you could either call it customer typing or a love-hate persona. And really this is about how somebody wants to complete the intended task. And I find these types of personas or customer typing to be incredibly valuable when you actually have a process that you need to design, a process or an experience. It's very transactional or has a lot of steps. Something like getting groceries is a classic example of there's actually, maybe 5 or so different common types of customers. And that is like how, in the grocery example, how they like to complete the task of getting groceries. So at a high level, you have the planners, the people who are going to do their meal planning, and then they're going to create the list and they're just going to like stick with their list and they're going to go to the grocery store and just buy what's on the list. Then you might have a type that's more unplanned and less structured, and they still have an idea of what they kind of need, but they're not as structured. They don't have a list. It's just kind of in their head. Oh, I'm going to need ground beef and mushrooms and onions, and they'll probably add some other things to their cart as they're there. Then you might have another customer type that is very price sensitive, and they're going to be looking at the flyers and be planning their meals based on what's on sale. And in that case, they might even go to multiple stores. So this is all about how they complete that transaction. And how you do this is you spend time observing the customer. So there's a ton of value in observing your customer. And if you have an online or a digital business as well, you can do this with screen recordings and other analytics tools to help you understand kind of the path that those customers are taking, how quickly, what are the steps that they're doing. So spend time observing your customer, identify what is most important to them, and what part of the journey do they love, do they really connect with, and what is really a deterrent or something that they really dislike. And create your customer types as a series. So think of your customer types as 3 to 5 different types, name them, and don't name them as necessarily something personal like Sally or Bobby, try to name them in a way that defines their customer type. So back to the grocery example, it would be planner, be ad hoc, it'd be what's on sale or something like that. And then that will help you design your journey or the experience in a way that accommodates all of those customer types. So in this approach to personas, this customer typing, you can find a great resource from the book called What Customers Crave. And there's also an audio version of it. It's really good. And what's interesting about this approach is that this approach is not really like widely adopted in kind of customer experience circles. It was created by somebody that isn't really a CX professional. They're more an entrepreneur. And this was something that they had identified and created out of their years of creating new businesses. And so there's lots of great stories in that book about this type of personas and just getting to kind of the heart of what's really important to customers. And so this example here, this is 4 different customer types that was created out of the author spending time observing how customers want to get a car wash or what's most important to them when getting a car wash. So I think he was working with a car wash out of California. And after spending, several hours sitting there observing, he identified these 4 different customer types. So there was sparkly, speedy, thrifty, and touching. And so for sparkly, what was really important to them was kind of having a clean car regularly, showing off. It was a little bit of a tapping into the ego part of their persona. Speedy, it was all about getting in and getting out as quickly as possible. Thrifty was about the price, and touching, they actually, wanted to be able to do part of the process themselves. So then taking it a step further, once he knew what these different customer types were, one of the elements that he built into the experience was an app. And by having the app developed, he was able to create this concept of stacking, where by meeting the needs of one persona, you can also meet the needs of other personas. So with this app, he was really able to tap into the needs of sparkly, speedy, and thrifty. So sparkly, because it was tapping into the ego side and always wanting to have their car cleaned, he noticed that they were coming with like a certain kind of cadence, maybe every week at the same time, same day. So having this mobile app where they could book in, then accommodated sparkly. For speedy, they wanted the certainty of knowing that they weren't going to have to wait, that they could just get in, get out. So again, having this mobile scheduling app allowed him to accommodate for speedy. And then for thrifty, they were able to then offer a discounted rate for the times of the day when they were less busy. So thrifty was able to book in at, say 10 a.m. when it's less busy and get a discounted rate. And it accommodated all 3 by developing that. And then even for touching, they could just pick and choose which service they wanted and book in for that. So, this concept of stacking allows you to think about how you can, with one solution, meet the needs of multiple customer types. It's a really good book, highly recommend it. And even the audio version's good. So many of them aren't. So it's a good one to spend some time reading. Okay, before we move on from personas and customer types, do we have any questions? Anybody?
Yeah, Janelle, just going back just before you were talking about the customer types, when we were talking about building personas, talking about champions, bringing in different functional areas of the business.
Yeah.
I was going through this, a similar thought process in my head, just as far as, even with journey mapping and everything, and we touch on emotions and things like that. Trying to figure out what was the best, way to travel through that journey. Was it by just getting a group of champions from every functional area of the business, or was it focusing down on the functional departments that are touching the clients the most during those stages, right? So when we're talking front end, right, awareness and being associated with the brand, is it more marketing and sales, right? And focus just on those, just on not wasting people's time. And then as you go further into the business, then it's more on the customer service representatives as we're dealing with existing clients and retention and everything.
It does kind of depend on your team, but generally I would say bringing in like one representative from each team serves, like it accommodates so many other goals, helps you build the customer experience competency across the organization. So even if they don't have a lot to contribute to that particular part of the journey, they'll still be learning more about the customer, they'll be learning more about the journey and starting to kind of build that muscle of what customer experience is and then bring it back into their teams. That said, it's also great because if you're only like, if you're just looking at the front end of the journey and so you're just including sales and marketing, there's a ton of bias when you include the people who are responsible for that portion of the journey, because it can be very difficult to separate yourself from the how we designed it to how it's actually being experienced. And so by bringing in other people from around the organization or even customers, it helps get a different perspective, a different mindset. They're seeing it differently and can actually maybe help the sales or the marketing team overcome some of those biases in terms of how they had originally designed the journey. So I always think it's good to have more people from throughout the organization. And then eventually, once you get to part that involves the IT team, then they've already learned a little bit more about journey mapping. They've seen how to do it by having participated in the sales marketing component. So anyways, I just think it's good all around to include more people from throughout the organization. I don't ever think it's a waste of time if you think about the outcome that you're trying to achieve as being more than just documenting that particular journey.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think it's really a benefit to silos of information and who knows what and where information is shared and just bringing it all together. I think that's something CX can help with.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, so we'll move on to the voice of the customer. So voice of the customer, if you take away one thing from this particular section, I'd really love for you to understand that your customers are communicating with you in so many different places. And a true voice of the customer program is more than just a survey. I'll talk to a lot of companies and they'll say, oh yeah, we've got a voice of the customer program. We do an annual survey. Well, that's not really a robust or comprehensive approach to understanding the voice of the customer. So it's omni-channel. They're communicating in so many different places, and we can talk about those different channels as we move through this. It also needs to be deliberate. A strong voice of the customer program is going to be deliberate and defined with an approach to identifying the insights, identifying the particular actions, assigning them to the right team, and then tracking and reporting on the results. So maybe you have a team that's collecting feedback through your surveys. Maybe they're looking at multiple channels or looking at social media reviews. But if you don't have a way to actually go through all of those, all that feedback, all of that great, that really super valuable content, identify the insights and then the actions, assigning them to the relevant team and then tracking and reporting on it, you don't have a complete or comprehensive voice of the customer program. And then the final piece is that it should be closed loop. Obviously, you're not going to respond on every channel to every customer, but thinking about how you can keep your customers informed or aware of the improvements that you're making as a result of what you've heard from them. And being a little bit more specific than just the general, we heard what you said and now we're doing it. You can be more specific. Say, we noticed on 80% of our reviews that the customers felt that the color blue of on our website was not appropriate or something. That's just a silly example, but you can get, pretty granular, pretty specific when you're closing the loop with them. And if you do get specific customer feedback that's like directed to you through one of the channels that you do monitor, like email, if they're sending you an email or voice, you should be closing the loop and letting know that you've gotten it and what you're doing with it. And I just have to say this because I hear it from so many organizations that they're doing NPS and they think that that's a voice of the customer program. It is not. So like I said, one survey, particularly NPS, does not make a voice of the customer program. Your voice of the customer program really needs to consider multiple channels, multiple points of time in the year, or ideally at all points in the year. It should always be living, and it should have some metrics assigned to it, as well as insights, actions, tasks, and then a reporting on those tasks. And so just to like kind of bring this home a little bit further, if you think about you and your partner, and you're in your home, and let's say for you only heard what they were telling you when you were in the living room or the kitchen, but they're talking to you when you're in the bedroom, or maybe when you're in the bathroom, or you're in the garage or outside, but you're only hearing what they're telling you when they're in the living room or the kitchen. Well, then you're missing, anywhere from, 50 to 80 to 90% of what's being shared with you. And so think about that with your customers too, because they're communicating with you via reviews, via email, via a voice, via social media. They're also communicating with you on your competitors' channels as well. So monitoring your competitors' channels, maybe it's not specific to you, but in a lot of instances, what's important to customers of your competitor is also going to be important to you. So thinking about all of those different channels and how you can be monitoring them, capturing the data, turning it into insights and actions. So important. So I have this little story from Nike. It's not my story, but I heard it directly from the person that originated the Voice of the Customer program over at Nike. And what they did when they were first implementing their Voice of the Customer program is they really looked for quick wins. So they knew that they were going to have a hard time getting buy-in for all of the different teams within Nike to really want to participate in this Voice of the Customer program. So what they did is they looked for these really kind of time-boxed, easy to deliver insights. So in this particular case, they spent time reviewing the reviews or the comments that they were getting on the website. So they were going to the different product pages, and they noticed that when customers were looking for shorts, running shorts in particular, one of the most important things to the customers was actually the pocket size. So there was a lot of questions or comments about the pocket size that was appearing on the product pages of running shorts. So that's a pretty easy insight to accommodate for, or to deliver an action on. So they talked to the marketing team and to the product team, and then very easily they were able to start photographing the pockets of these running shorts and adding into the descriptions information about the size of these pockets. And what they did to start to create some of this buy-in and this momentum is they measured the conversion rates before they started reporting on and showing the pictures of the pocket sizes or the pockets. And then after, and then they reported in this kind of regular newsletter that they created internally, the improvement in the conversion rates. So by doing this and having, a couple of these little examples in this newsletter, suddenly the teams across the company started coming to them saying, oh, we aren't getting the conversion rates or the sales that we're looking for. We're having really high returns in this particular product. Can you help us? And so suddenly they had all of these cross-functional teams coming to them and asking them to help identify insights so that they could then, improve their own results. So just some food for thought on how you might be able to implement this yourself. And so what they did is they just had 3 easy steps. One was understand what's going on, the situation, the impact of it, analyze, look for solutions, how you can improve that, and then curate. So they took care of the curation part. So the identifying of the action and then documenting what that action was, making sure that there was someone who was assigned to it, and then tracking it through until delivery, as well as the measurement piece. So they curated that themselves. And understanding, analyzing, curating was the 3 easy steps and kind of their Bible to voice of the customer when they first got going. So I'd love to hear from all of you what you're doing right now from a voice of the customer perspective, and maybe what's one action that you think you could take back to your organizations to help improve your voice of the customer program. I'm going to see if I can go back on video because I feel like I'm just talking into a blank screen. Okay. So Angela, it looks like you went off mute. Would you like to share with us what you guys are doing currently?
Well, what I'm taking back to our company is basically we have weekly meetings, and we have a lot of kind of like members who want to come on board with memberships, but we don't, if they're not suitable for us, we in theory don't get back to them. So I'm trying to see if I can come up with a solution to actually saying, sorry, they're not really suitable for us. So that's what I'm kind of like my takeaway is for our meeting, which is going to happen this afternoon. So hopefully somebody will listen.
That's great, because even if they're not a fit for you, they might know other people who are.
Exactly.
There's a lot of benefits to making sure you manage that, we'll call it the rejection process, managing that well and making sure that people feel respected through that side
Exactly.
of things. And there's some ways you can automate it too. If you have questions, we can probably tackle that in our one-on-one.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
And Ashley?
I mean, I would say we definitely don't have a comprehensive voice of the customer program in place. We're still working on, like rolling out a regular way to get like a CSAT and NPS score. So, and right now we're kind of stuck with like trying to integrate it into our CRM, right? So there's some technical hurdles that we're kind of dealing with, but even then I mean, it won't be an annual survey. It will be every time there's a check-in meeting, they'll get that after, but that's really just like one way, right? So I don't know that we have a comprehensive program in place. And truthfully, when we try to solicit feedback from our members, we don't often get a great response rate. So yeah, there's work to be done there. I'm not even entirely sure on who's going to lead that. So
definitely having a point person identified is helpful. And if you can't get all the way from like say 0 to 100, just thinking about incrementally how you can improve it. So at Gazelle, where I work right now, what we do is we don't really do a lot of NPS. We do have some regular surveys that we send out. But again, I think we're all experiencing this. There's a lot of survey fatigue, and so people don't really want to participate in surveys. But we do a lot of one-on-one conversations. And so what we do is we take notes from each conversation and we share that feedback on a Slack channel, which is open to the entire company. And then when there's something that we think is relevant to a cross-functional team, we'll tag them in that Slack chat so that they can pay particular attention to that. It isn't like we aren't at the point where we're using like sentiment analytics or running it through voice analytics or anything like that. We have a fairly small customer base, but we are making sure that we aren't keeping that information to ourselves, because we used to just hoard it within our customer success team, keep all that all that great data, and then product wouldn't get it, our data team wouldn't get it, marketing and the sales team wouldn't get it. So we've just kind of created this process of after every check-in we have with our customers, whoever led that meeting puts a few key summary notes and posts it on this channel. And then our kind of next step is that there is somebody that goes through and is responsible for collating all of that, so we can see if there's any trends. But there's another point I just want to raise, is that you might only hear something once, but use your gut. And maybe you'll hear it once, but you'll be like, you know what, that person, that customer is really insightful. They've really hit the crux of the problem, or they've identified something that's really innovative that we've never thought of. Don't let quantity or the number of times you're hearing something necessarily dictate impact. So keep your eyes out for like that needle in the haystack thing that you might hear as well. But just general guidance is share it with your company as much as you can. You can add a customer minute or a customer report into the regular team meetings, so that you're always bringing those insights that you have heard from your team back to the rest of the company. Okay, Roberto.
Yep, I'm here. So we have satisfaction surveys, and we try to measure NPS. We're very open with the company about customer feedback. We share what clients tell us. We share that with the whole company on a regular basis. I'm not sure. So when we get feedback, and at some point the feedback is negative, let's say, we have people that reach out to the clients to have broader conversations about, can you tell me why are you saying this? Can you expand on the idea of why wouldn't you refer us to a friend of yours or to a colleague of yours to use our services? And we expand that feedback based on clients who are open to continue with the conversation, because sometimes clients fill out surveys, but they don't want to talk about them later, which is challenging.
Yeah.
We also have feedback that come from meetings from the sales teams with clients and with prospects. So that feedback that comes related to our competition, to why a client decide, or a prospect, why did they decide to go with another company rather than going with us. We take that feedback also and try to get insights of what's happening. Why did they choose to go to other client, to other vendor? Was there a feature that we didn't have that other vendor has? Should we put that feature in the roadmap? Who else is going to get benefit from adding this feature that we heard from this client that we lost? And then we have the support team, which is speaking with clients every day through tickets and chats. So that's another voice of customer that we receive, whether it's complaints, whether it's things that clients are not understanding from the help pages, whether it's bugs that we haven't identified that unfortunately clients found before we did. So I think we can do more, definitely, but I think we do a lot. Sure.
That's great. That's great. So do you have any one little takeaway that you could take back to your organization based on what we've shared today?
I think the personas is something we should work better on. Our clients are very different. Our clients are very particular. So trying to put a face to them, it will be an interesting exercise to try to organize them in a certain way.
Fabulous. Thanks for sharing, Roberto. Jeff?
Yeah, it's been an interesting past couple of years. So we didn't really have a formal voice of the customer program before 2 years, and then I stepped into the role solo. Prior to that, we were just using Qualtrics to do some surveying, things like that, quarterly, semi-annually, or whenever marketing got to do it, because they were kind of doing it on their own, off the side. So the past couple of years has just been standardizing that, getting quarterly survey out to our broad kind of base of customers, which focuses, like you guys said, satisfaction, NPS, product satisfaction, a number of areas. And then the journey really in the past 2 years for me has gone into what started off as identifying and developing moments of truth in the journey.
Great.
So focusing on, right, first contacts, first touch with sales, first touch with implementation, right? Those a lot of firsts and then ongoing areas. And then trying to find ways to look at those, measure them, identify them, go through the work so that we could create that journey pathway with measurables attached to them. So that's kind of been the journey. So now we continue to do the broad base. We have since brought in the starting points of a win-loss program, which focuses on
Nice.
client interviews. So phone interviews, Zoom interviews, typically, because our customers are across Canada. And then getting into onboarding surveys. So starting to get a touch point with customers 30 days after they've onboarded as new customers, identifying some areas like, new client goals, things like that. And really the motions now is to try and move from a lot of lagging indicators like survey results and moving into more real time is kind of, so we just purchased a version of Pendo. So we'll be using Pendo to do in-app interactions as well as track usage within the application. So that's kind of, I just got my first employee like 2 weeks ago. So
Congratulations.
it's been busy.
That's great. Sounds like you're definitely considering multiple channels and different parts of the journey, which is fabulous. And those really important parts of the journey, which is onboarding and then when they've left. So great. Vivian, I'll let you speak up if you want to, but I know you're not feeling well. So if you prefer, you can just stay on mute. Okay, so I don't know about you or how many of you have had the opportunity to work on a business case. A couple of years ago, we noticed this trend in the CX industry as a whole, where funding was being cut for projects or for CX programs in general. And when we kind of dug into it, what we found was that largely it was due to there being a lack of results or demonstrated results. And when you pulled it back even further, it was because there hadn't been a business case that was done, or the business case wasn't identifying the measures in advance. So what was going to be reported on. So one of the things that I've pulled together myself to just help CX professionals, or even if you're not a CX professional, but you happen to be somebody that, goes and asks for funding, is how to just do like a really, really simple business case. And it can be super basic, but a basic business case considers 4 key things. And that's identifying, what are you planning to do? Why are you recommending that approach? What is the cost? And what is the financial benefit? And sometimes it can be hard to have really strong metrics in place, but be creative. Think about if your organization doesn't have strong financial metrics, and then you don't know, say, your conversion rates or what the total lifetime value is of a customer. And if you lose them in year 1 versus year 3, you can start to kind of pull some of that together and you can approximate. So the thing about business cases and reporting on financial metrics is you can just state your assumptions. So you can get to be really creative and just start to get people used to attributing some sort of financial component, financial benefit, or cost avoidance to the initiatives that you're working on. And then think about it as well, not only from the benefit, but also the cost avoidance perspective. So if you're streamlining the complaint process, let's say, you're going to have savings on a number of different fronts. You've streamlined it and you've made it digital instead of having an agent deal with it, and you're going to save on the human resources. You've improved it and you can retain customers, then there's a financial benefit to keeping the customers longer, and you can measure that. And just think about, say 2 to 4 different financial metrics that you're going to be able to deliver as a result of your project or your initiative. And then also, once you've done the business case, always remember to report on them and keep your stakeholders informed. And I have like a super simple template. It's more of like kind of like a scratch pad for you as you're trying to work through the business case. And then you would summarize it in something really simple, or maybe you have a template that you have to use at your organization. But at the heart of it, always be prepared to speak to these 4 elements. And this is a modified version of Forrester's recommended business case. So it's a kind of the 4-step, 4-sentence business case. You should be able to articulate your program or your initiative in 4 sentences. So we plan to do whatever to improve this at a cost of, and then what is the benefit, and really trying to capture that benefit and a financial component. So if it's, just improving something that's not financial, try to take it that step further and define the financial benefit associated with that improvement. And I'll send you this template. I also have a chapter that I've written on this particular topic that I will include in that package, which I'm going to prepare. It's part of a book called Customer Experience 2. So there's, I think, 3 of them or 4 of them out right now, where there are these compilation books where a bunch of CX professionals from all around the world have come together and contributed a chapter to each of these books. So I've contributed to the first book and the second book, and they're also available on Amazon. But they're really great because they're kind of written by CX professionals who are in the trenches doing this day in, day out. And most of the people in those books are really approachable. So if you read their chapter and you have more questions, all of their information is in the biography at the back of the books, and you can reach out to them directly and ask them questions. And I know a lot of them, they're all pretty approachable. So if you want to continue your customer experience journey, feel free to look out for those books. I'll also include links for you there. Okay, so we are actually wrapping up today's session here. So I know we're at the end before next week's in-person session, but I did still have some learning challenges or homework for you to take away and work on yourselves. I would love to see everybody, try to develop their skills around the customer types, spend some time observing the customer behavior and trying to identify, say, 3 to 5 different customer types. And then if you wanted to, you could even take it a step further and think about how you would modify the journey or the experience to accommodate each of those types. Again, the 5 to 7 minutes of reflection. What did you learn over the last week? Anything you want to share with your team? And then just solidifying this week's learnings by interviewing 1 to 2 customers. I find it's so great to be able to hear their stories. So if you're doing surveys or micro surveys, maybe you're reading reviews, you're doing all that good stuff. There's a lot to be said for having a 20-minute conversation with a customer and asking them about their journey, about their experience. What is the value that they're getting out of working with your organization? What are the areas for improvement? What would they like to see in the next iteration of the product or the service offering? Spending 20 minutes with a customer is a really great use of time. So I'd love to encourage all of you, if you can, to try to talk to 1 or 2 customers to dive in a little bit further and ask them some questions, get to know them better. And then you can take that away and start to build out your personas even further. Okay, that's it for this week. Shaylin, do you have any final thoughts? Okay. Oh, there she is.
Oh, I was gonna say, no, nothing more to add today.
Okay, so you all have the invite from Shaylin. If you could let her know if you're able to attend or not. That would be great. And feel free to contact me if there's something you want me to dive in further at next week. Next week is just kind of a summary and debrief type event and an opportunity for us to get together in person and meet each other and build our little networks, and maybe have a buddy that you could reach out to or partner with, or ask questions of. It can be lonely being the only CX professional. Jeff, I can relate being the only one. So feel free to use that as an opportunity to build out your networks and have people that you can connect with and brainstorm with or pick their brains. Look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.